Hello there, you're listening to Ebird Online, and I'm back with another video. And so today we've got something just a little bit different. I promised you a Ronald and Tiffany video, which I thought was going to be, 10-12 minutes. But when I started my research, guess what I find? Ronald and Tiffany are getting a divorce. Colour me surprised. And so to ensure you guys are not waiting for another video forever and a day, I decided to split the video into 3 parts. And so this first video is going to be the story so far. And when I say the story so far, I really do mean it. We're going to be picking over the lies, the disinformation, and the many untruths of Ronald and Tiffany. We're then going to delve into the red flags of each party. And the final video is going to be all the social media breakdown and scandal surrounding this ridiculous couple's divorce. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. Yes, please press that big red button and make Ebird a very happy Ebird. So without further ado, I give you Ronald and Tiffany. So guys, when I first saw this couple, it started out so badly I thought it couldn't possibly get any worse. Guys, TLC had us all fooled. This relationship just became progressively more and more toxic. Now I don't mind telling you, the Ebird thought the evil protagonist in this story was Ronald. I found him to be sly, manipulative, calculating, not to mention misogynistic, chauvinistic, and an all-round imitating MF of a human being. High praise indeed, I know. But good lord, when I started picking beneath the layers of this story, I realised Tiffany's little better. Tiffany has quite a few issues, I believe, with the truth. But the worst sin about Tiffany in my book is that she's extremely selfish and self-centred. She never thinks for 1 second about how her actions might affect others, although she always protests the contrary. Tiffany does Tiffany, and everybody else, unfortunately, is along for the ride. So when we first were introduced to Tiffany, Tiffany explained she's not a normal 27-year-old from Maryland, but that she was a 27-year-old with an 8-year-old son. Familiar story, Ebird, I thought. A couple of young star-crossed college lovers. Girl gets pregnant, has the baby, the relationship breaks down, and she's left a single parent. Not so, according to Tiffany. Apparently, she didn't know until she was 9 months pregnant, and she actually went into hospital, and apparently she didn't know she was pregnant until she actually gave birth. So here's what Tiffany said about her pregnancy. I went through my pregnancy with no signs of pregnancy. I got my period every month. I had no belly, no kicking, no cravings, no morning sickness. And then one night out of nowhere, I had these horrible cramps. I went to the hospital and I was like, am I dying? And the nurse said, you're 10 centimetres dilated and we need to deliver this baby now. Right, okay, so let's pick through this. No belly. Really, Tiffany, no belly? Okay. Again, no cravings. At your word. And you went through pregnancy with no signs of pregnancy. Now, off the bat, I believe this statement. I've seen programmes before where people haven't realised they were pregnant until they literally gave birth. But when I put all the pieces of the jigsaw together, I don't believe Tiffany for a second. So she says, I went through my pregnancy with no signs of pregnancy. It would make more sense, and all of the other stories that I've heard are, I went through my pregnancy and I didn't recognise the signs. Or I knew that I felt a bit sick at one point, but I didn't realise it was morning sickness. I knew I was gaining weight, but I thought I was just getting fat. No one actually has ever alleged that I've seen that there were just no signs, and that's why I didn't know. This tells me, Tiffany, you're not telling the full truth. Tiffany has what I think is one of the worst cases of cognitive dissonance I've ever known. Tiffany's deep in denial about many things. I'm clearly pregnant. Let's ignore that I'm having a baby. My boyfriend is a drug-addicted, alcoholic, gambling criminal with no career to speak of. Let's get married. I dislike living in South Africa. I live in an extremely poor area and my child isn't safe. I don't know what our next move is or how we can be together. Let's have a baby. So when I put all these things together, it makes me realise, Tiffany, you knew full well you were pregnant. Maybe she didn't 100% know, but I think it's highly likely that she had all the signs and she decided to ignore it, just like she's done so many other times in her short life. So yes, that kind of sets the scene for how I feel about Tiffany. Next up, Ronald. Ronald's had lots of problems in his life, and the main one was that he was a gambling addict. Oh dear Ronald, if you choose a life with Tiffany, you're still continuing your addiction, let me tell you that. So in addition to his gambling addiction, he'd also stolen from his mother and she went to the police, so he got done for either robbery or burglary. He got caught in possession of controlled substances. Apparently, he borrowed his friend's coat and his friends left his drugs in there. As you do. He's also been done for drink driving a couple of times, the obligatory DUI, and also he's been done in possession of stolen goods and stolen money. So yes, he's quite the little sticky-fingered liar. But there are two things that really stood out to me in all of this. The first one was that he's a gambler. And so Tiffany decided to get together with somebody with a terrible addiction, and he went to rehab for 6 months. And right before they were due to get married, he relapsed again. So he went back into rehab. Ronald only came out of rehab 8 days before they got married, yet Tiffany still flew to South Africa and married him. Literally, who does that and brings along an 8-year-old child for good measure? But the second thing I think speaks to his dark nature. Apparently, he repeatedly robbed his mum's house. And once she went away on holiday, and when she came back, he'd virtually cleared her whole house out. And that's when she went to police. So it's not just a common garden addiction that he had. It was obviously extremely bad. And I don't know too much about addiction, but I do know you have to have a very strong, solid base of people around you to overcome it properly. I don't think addicts are cured by hanging out with goddamn liars and fucking fabricators like Tiffany. And also, just while we're on that subject, I've got a couple of friends that have dried out or they've been to NA, and they are not allowed to hang out with anybody that they used to drink with, that they used to indulge in whatever vice it is they have with. I note with great interest that Ronald's friendship group is completely the same friendship group he grew up with, the friendship group he's always been in, and the friendship group that got involved with all this jiggery-pokery. So it makes me laugh because I think, how much have you actually changed? I do believe he wants to change, but have you put everything in place so that you can change? The jury's out. In fact, no, the jury's back. You're very likely to relapse because you seem to have built your castle on mounds of sand. And so before the wedding, Ronald speaks to producers and he's explaining, I won't be able to get into America, most likely because of my extensive criminal history and my litany of problems, my lack of work history and my all-round disreputable character. Therefore, Tiffany and son Daniel must come to live in South Africa. So before the wedding, Tiffany was like 50-50. She didn't know if she was going to get married and then come back to America and try and get him over, or if she was just going to stay in South Africa and live there for a while. So on a whim, after getting married, they just decide to stay there with son Daniel. How can you put a child in such a precarious position? He doesn't know if he's going back to America or not, or if he's going to live in South Africa. They live with Tiffany's mum when they're at home, so he misses grandma and aunties. It's very clear to me, even though Tiffany always says, Daniel's my first priority, it's really clear that she thinks always about herself. Ronald, for his part, I think his head was in the right place. He wanted to create a whole family and have his family with him. Tiffany immediately let Daniel call him dad. Another thing which I think was a little bit too soon. He called him dad before he'd even physically met him. Ronald tries to be the best, most supportive father he can be, but it's really difficult because Ronald has never had a work history and Ronald has no trade and doesn't realise how to make money. But one of the nicest scenes that I saw in that first season was when Tiffany turned up with Daniel. And basically Daniel ran right up to Ronald and Ronald kind of ignored Tiffany and went straight to Daniel and he was like, hi dad, and they hugged each other. And Daniel was obviously missing that father figure, so Ronald is a very important person in Daniel's life. It's not to be messed around with, but Tiffany's flip-flopping and toing and froing puts that relationship in jeopardy. But also the relationship's very difficult because Tiffany's never happy with Ronald. When she went over there to get married, she actually said to Ronald, you can go on your stag night, but you can't get drunk. I don't want any excessive drinking. You can't spend any cash. I want everything on a credit card. I don't want any strippers or any women. Oh, Tiffany, you may as well have just said, Ronald, you can't have a stag night. That would have been far easier. Do you think his friends are going to acquiesce to your ridiculous litany of demands? Of course they're not. Ronald went out and got absolutely paralytic and Tiffany was really upset. Oh, Tiffany, you and I both know that was always in the post. And so the couple get married and by all accounts it was a lovely day and they settle down to life in South Africa. They get an apartment in what I can only describe as a bad part of town because they can ill afford to stay anywhere else. And guys, it does seem like super dangerous, especially having Daniel there. But Ronald said yes, it is really violent and there's lots of murders and robberies and all that sort of stuff, but you know what? That's South Africa. It's still great. Ronald, it's only great if you're used to it. I think for 5-year-old Daniel, it's certainly not great. Now I have to say at this point, I've been to South Africa a few times, and I was gonna say I actually found it to be okay, but when I'm thinking about it now, there have been quite a few incidents on the times that I've been there. Yeah, I guess it is quite dangerous. I stayed in somewhere called Camps Bay in Cape Town, and pretty much all of the houses in that area have massive walls and big security gates and fences and stuff. But I remember one time, I think the second time we went there, a random person was standing in the kitchen. He just kind of ran out of the open door and ran away. But yeah, if I think about it, there were a few issues. And also I remember there as well we had private security. And I suppose you only pay for extra security if the police are swamped. So what happened next? Well, the happy couple settled into their bad area. But Tiffany and Ronald have got news for us. What's the news? She's pregnant. What? Yep, that's right. She tells her mum, "You're going to be a grandma again." And her mum couldn't even be bothered to feign happiness. In fact, it's fair to say she looked fucking horrified. She looked dumbfounded. I feel very sorry for Tiffany's mum. She seems like a lovely lady. Fancy giving birth to one so stupid. I'm not blaming it all on Tiffany, but this is obviously contrary to what Tiffany wants. Ronald, on the other hand, I think Ronald was very happy to be being a father, and also he thought it was going to make Tiffany stay in South Africa. And it might have done, but Tiffany and Ronald one day decided to take a look around at the healthcare facilities there. And it seems as if Ronald doesn't have private healthcare. His healthcare plan consists of a medicine cabinet on his bathroom wall. And so the hospital they could afford, whilst it looked very clean, there was no doors, and the doctor was saying, sometimes you won't necessarily get a bed. You may have to give birth on the floor, but wherever we can, we try to ensure you have a bed. Upon listening to this statement, Tiffany was already mentally packing what she needed to put in a suitcase and go back to America. So Tiffany makes a decision to go home. And then there was another one of those tear-jerking scenes at the airport when Ronald was hugging Daniel and they were both in tears and both crying. And it's really very hard. Everything's very hard on Daniel, and it's quite hard on Ronald as well. I know Ronald's a bad lad, and we don't like what Ronald's done. But Ronald's trying to change, but Tiffany seems to be thwarting that change all the time. She's working against everything he's trying to do. And she even admitted to his dad, I know that when I leave, every time I leave South Africa, that's when Ronald goes to bits, and that's when he goes on a drinking binge and goes gambling and so on. I'm not saying that his actions are in any way her fault, but you have to realise there are triggers, and those need to be managed and minimised. If I'm honest, Ronald needs a relationship with a girl who lives in South Africa and loves South Africa and doesn't need to be having a brand new baby who will not see be born, going back to America for an undetermined amount of time. Nobody needs to see that. So of course Ronald missed the birth of his child, and Carly Rose was a beautiful little girl. And after she was born, Ronald had to keep in touch by Skype only. Guys, I pretty much think that would kill anyone. I really do. I don't know what I would have done in that situation, but getting pregnant at that point was literally the worst thing that could have happened. The worst. So the first time that Ronald actually sees Carly Rose was when she was 8 months old, and Tiffany took her over for a trip with Daniel, and for the first time this family of 4 were united. Ronald seems to be doing quite well with his recovery, and he also in some ways seemed to have grown up towards the end of the series. Again, his interaction with Daniel is absolutely lovely, and I think Daniel really takes a lot from this relationship, as does Ronald. And so it's on this trip that they decide finally to move forward with the American visa process because Tiffany point blank refuses to live in South Africa. I can't completely blame her because in this time I feel like Ronald could have either learned to trade or got a job or set up a business or be doing something which means he earns enough money for them to live in a good area. But in the absence of that, I have to admit it probably isn't safe for Daniel and for Carly to live there. And so that's everything for this first catch-up video. So what does the Ebird make to all of this? Well, I have a sneaking suspicion that Ronald wanted to get Tiffany pregnant so that she'd have to stay in South Africa. And I have another sneaking suspicion that she wanted to get pregnant because she thought it might look good on the visa application when trying to get criminal Ronald into the US. Personally, I don't think it will make a jot of difference. I think if they don't want to let him in, they won't let him in, which I think more than likely they're not going to want to. If I'm honest, if I had my own country, in fact I'd love my own country, if I had my own country, I don't think I'd let Ronald in. I know it sounds mean, but I really don't. I want the best for this couple and I want them to be together. But the main thing that strikes me from all of this is that Daniel is always an afterthought in Tiffany's reckonings, and that's what really gets my goat. And this started out right from the very start. Tiffany tells us it was a shock that Daniel was even in existence. So Tiffany told her partner at the time, "You're either all in or forget about it, you're all out." Obviously, it was more of a shock to him because he had no idea she was pregnant. And so he chose, at that tender age of 18, he's all out. And that was it. He never got to have a relationship with his son. But the worst thing was, you robbed Daniel the opportunity of having a relationship with his dad. Even if you only saw him once a week or once a month, surely it would be preferable to nothing. Daniel sees Ronald very, very rarely, yet he takes an awful lot from that relationship. So couldn't he have taken the same from his own actual father? I don't know who died and made Tiffany God, but she didn't give this guy an actual chance to meet with Daniel, bond with him. And obviously certain feelings of love come to a child that would mean you would be all in even if you never imagined you might be. So she didn't give the relationship the chance to develop. And that to me is fairly unforgivable. And even more so now because unfortunately I hear that very recently Daniel's father passed away. So now he never has a chance to know his father. I find the whole thing extremely sad and quite unforgivable. So guys, let me know what you think. Do you think this relationship was doomed from the start? I certainly do. In my next video, I'm going to be going through all of the red flags from Ronald and Tiffany from this season. And I'm going to be looking at the way that Tiffany kind of set it up to fail, I think. And also I'm going to be looking at the shortcomings of Ronald. So guys, let me know what you think in comments down below, and I will get on with my next video. Guys, thank you so much for listening. You've been listening to Ebird Online, and I bid you good day.